everyone, I'm Rita Kakati-Shah, your host for The Uma Show. Welcome to your one-stop journey for feeling empowered. We're a platform for change, we build confidence, we are your voice. We want you to be bold, be you, be Uma. Today, we're exploring women supporting women, and I'm so excited to be joined by two goddesses of go-getting, Barinder Sandhu and Dhillon, who are joining us from Canada, and they represent the pink attitude evolution. Welcome, ladies. How are you?
Thank you, Rita.
Hi, Rita.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here today.
Oh, same here. So let's start by talking about your backgrounds and how you grew up. Barinder, let's start with you.
Yeah, so Rita, thank you for allowing us to be on your show today. Again, very excited to be here. I really grew up in a traditional household, or what I perceive to be a traditional household, Sikh Punjabi household, and my parents had migrated from India in their early teens, spent time in England, but never got to afford that formal education. They were blue collar working class heroes and provided for us. And, as we grew up, initially, I thought we were really sort of being blocked into these gender stereotype roles, because I had the responsibility of being the eldest daughter in our entire family. So I shouldered, to be more, to not fall for some of the stereotypes that were there necessarily. And there was a lot of pressure that was placed on me to do good. And so initially I thought, this is kind of what I'm going to be molded into. But when I look back, it was quite the opposite. So even though my parents had these restrictions on us when it came down to like makeup, the music we listened to, the TV shows we got to watch, how we spoke to other people, what our responsibilities in the house were, we had an endless amount of opportunities. So one of the things that my mother had taught us over time was, because of what her unfortunate sort of situation was, she wasn't given that opportunity or taught how to be the appropriate housewife, if you will, right? So she didn't know how to cook. She didn't know how to take care of a house, what the responsibility of being a wife or a mother were. And so for her, it was absolutely critical to be like, I have to teach my girls this. Not because she wanted us to be that typical housewife, but she didn't want us to face or encounter the challenges that she did. And so for us, it was like, oh, Mom, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to learn this? It wasn't about us being that perfect housewife. It was about her lessons learned, her struggles to be like, I'm not going to allow my daughters to go through what I did. And so, she always provided for us. She did the night shifts at night, worked all the time, but had to take care of the household responsibilities, but always gave us those opportunities. So, Rita, we had, the sports education. So my mom put us in swimming and skating. She's like, you're going to be Canadian. You better learn those Canadian activities and really participate. And it was about having the best gadgets. So she was ahead of her times when it came to computer systems. We have Leapfrog now for children. My mom was into VTech, always buying us those gadgets to be like, get your mathematics up, understand science, and really empowered us with all of this. On top of that, she really nurtured our music ability. I played the guitar, I played the clarinet, the flute. She always encouraged us to do that. In arts and crafts. On the flip side, I thought my father's going to sort of like keep us at an arm's length because that's the traditional role. How much influence does your father have? My father had me under a hood of a car, checking spark plugs. He taught me how to change tire at the age of 8. And he was a union rep at his work. And so for him, it was a great pride that he would take me along with him. I would be in front of 100 union men rep, 10 years old, standing on a chair, stating my name and my purpose of why I'm there. And so, it was really important for him and my parents, for us to be politically savvy, to understand freedom and the right to fight for freedom and to keep going forward. And so I would write letters to our elected officials on behalf of my parents, and it didn't really stop there. I think the greatest gift they gave us was to help people. They never stopped helping people. So not only did they struggle coming into Canada and finding their own way and doing these labor jobs, but they also helped anybody they could, their siblings, and opening up their house, opening up their finances to, and that meant my sister and I filling in immigration forms, understanding how to interpret things, how to speak to an immigration case study like lawyer. And so these responsibilities, fell on our shoulders because it was a collective family mission. And that sort of mentorship stuck with us, and about how are we going to give back? How are we going to help even when we have nothing? And so for us, my parents took us from building something out of nothing. And we broke that cycle for them. They put all that trust and effort in us. And now we're multi-degree holders, professional, all four of us. And we were able to allow those dreams, those sacrifices be worth something. So for us, it was really about hard work. And being financially responsible and savvy and not giving up.
Yeah, I love those important lessons. Your parents have given you such a strong upbringing. The importance of independence, trust, taking ownership, and actually that hard work is such an important lesson. So thank you for sharing that. Ruby, you grew up in Canada. Walk us through your upbringing as well.
Yeah, so it's funny enough that Barinder and I have kind of known each other since high school. So our parents were very similar in our upbringing. My parents, like her parents, worked labor jobs. My dad actually worked 2 or 3 jobs. Ironically, the same irony of my mom didn't know because she was from an army background. She's kind of been grown up, all throughout different regions of India. Got married to a village group of people who had very different upbringing. She was grown up with servants, so she didn't know how to raise herself or raise anybody else. So the challenges came really strong in our house growing up. And I think similar to Barinder's mom's expectations for us, she didn't want us to fall short like she did. And then in addition to that, we had, extended family. Like my dad was the first one here. My mom was the first one here. I literally growing up, I always had 20 people living in the house. So it was like an open door policy. And every, couple of months, my dad's like, so-and-so was coming to live with us. And we're just like, we had to adjust and, always cram our rooms together. And my sister and I shared rooms for like the longest time, just because we had so many people in the house. And I think the biggest lesson that I think I've learned from them was that humility of having empathy for people, no matter how much they were struggling, as Barinder said. They always had their hearts and wallets open to everybody. My grandfather was an advocate of women. In his time, he raised both my grandparents, both put a huge emphasis on women, made sure they were the most educated, made sure they were like reaching heights higher than the men in the family. So growing up, I always had strong male figures in my life, especially from my grandparents set point, and on my mom's side, my uncles and my mom. And so, I think that translated into what I'm doing today with Think Attitude is just carrying forward their legacy and their teachings forward. And I think that for me was sort of the staple in terms of my upbringing that I, brought forward. And obviously in my household, I really enjoyed the fact that, we had a business, we all worked together, all my extended families worked together there. And then, our house became that central hub for all the cousins and all the family members every summer to be there. So growing up, that was really important to me, and I think that carried forward where I always wanted to keep everyone together as my parents kept us together, and helped keep that legacy going forward. So that's a bit about how we sort of grew up in our household.
Such a strong message about that family unity and that bond and how strong it really is. And it is an educational experience, to your point. And speaking of education, that is actually a topic that generally plays a very strong role in South Asian families. So what did you study, Ruby, and how did that affect your career choices?
Yeah, so funny enough, from an educational standpoint, and like many South Asian households, the choice is either you're becoming a doctor, lawyer, or engineer.
Yeah.
So growing up, I really resented my parents for having such strict rules around us. But as you evolve, you look back and you understand that, why they thought the way that they was. And it was just because, in going back to them, they wanted to provide us with a comfortable life, an easier path. And for them, they thought that these were the only professions that you can look at to get you there. So I followed the path until I, was introduced to the banking industry, and I chose not to, pursue the medical profession. I would say this is probably that making that choice was one of the most difficult times in my life, because I had two very disappointed parents. Matter of fact, my dad was really reserved with me for many years. And on top of that, I had family members, cousins, and some close friends distance themselves because they started to make some preconceived notions of me making a personal choice that was really healthy for me. But the good news is that my parents and my dad especially came around. He's the first one I always called when I had a promotion, and till this day, he's my biggest cheerleader.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear about that. How about you, Barinder? How about the impact of education and your life choices?
Yeah, education was always emphasized. It was absolutely critical, although it wasn't necessarily emphasized in our entire extended family. I even remember my grandmother saying, "Stop burying your head in the book, in your books. You're not going to find the husband that you're looking for in those books." And it was like, okay. Whereas my parents were always like, encouraging us to say, either you can pick up the broom and sweep for the rest of your life, or you can pick up that book and educate yourself. And so for us, education had the greatest sort of emphasis and utmost importance. And it was a journey, right? And similar to what Ruby said about the staple fields that we were sort of told, the traditional pathways, I came to realize at the end of university, I did chemistry and I was great in STEM and science because it was easy for me and it was natural. But I also realized as I started taking more business classes in my fourth year that I loved business. I really had this desire to learn more. A little too late, right? For some people, but I actually then took steps and measures throughout my life to be like, no, I'm going to figure out how I can bridge these two worlds together. And so for me, going into the regulatory affair, that quality assurance pathway was one step into bridging that gap. And so then I became a technical expert. I didn't want to work in the lab. And so I used that to leverage myself into the pharma world, but then learned the technical side, learned management and supervision and how to conduct myself and really support an organization with their growth. But at one point, I also realized that, what, I need to go back to school now. I need to get another formal degree. And so I asked to work part-time and did my MBA at the business school in Toronto, Rotman School of Business. And so it was so critical for me to get that higher education because it allowed me to connect with people. That sort of teaching allowed me to better understand and appreciate different perspectives and how to communicate better. And ideas, how do you take those ideas and now execute on them? And I think that the biggest aha moment of where everything came together for me and how important education was in 2013. I was asked to go to India. And this was my first business trip on my own to lead multiple projects, meet with various companies all over India, and be the representative now, to give authority and direction on what was needed. And I was put on a first-class flight from New York, right? I would never spend $15,000+ going on a first class flight in a 5-star sort of hotel. This was something that was done by work. And I went into work and I, went into these different companies. And I remember during lunchtime, one of the sort of officials at this other pharma company that we were working with said to me, Barinder, can you please explain to me how a woman like yourself, who comes from an uneducated family, who's Sikh Punjabi, is now here in this room telling us what to do? And for me, it was like, it hit me in the face, like, oh my God, like, and they try to explain how there's a quota system in India. And like, it's unheard of for a Sikh woman to have this much power and control to be able to do that. And that's when I called my parents from India as soon as I got home. And I cried to them because I was like, your sacrifices allowed me this opportunity to stand here.
Right.
And I'm so proud of the fact, and you should, and I realize what you've done to make this happen. And so for me, that was that moment where I was like, wow, they really did it. It wasn't I did it, they did it for me. And so education, again, is just this continuous cycle. And so I've never given that up, right? So for me, it's always learning new skills because the world is changing. The dynamics change. And the only way you're going to adapt to that world is if you're changing as well. And so I would always encourage everyone, it's not a one-stop shop. You get your education, great, you got your degrees, put them up on the wall. No, it's about continuous growth, and allowing yourself to grow and allowing others to grow, and then allowing the world to grow, to be able to, like you're doing those outreach programs, to contribute to them so that the impact is beyond yourself.
Absolutely. I love the way that you actually bring that together with the education, because to your point, we don't know what we don't know. And we have to know that even when we think we know, our minds are always growing, the world is changing. So when we've accomplished or mastered something, it's already changed in the real world. And understanding that and seeing it from a different lens, especially when you go back to where your parents came from, that must have been such a powerful and impactful moment for you as well. And speaking of impact, the pink attitude evolution is something that has taken Canada by storm. Ruby, can you walk us through what it's all about and how you came to starting this incredible movement?
Yeah, thank you for that compliment. It's a testament, I think, first by starting with core values of giving back. I believe that we're here on rented space and we can't take life for granted, and we can't only just take from life, but it's our responsibility also to give back. The organization for me started with me trying to fill gaps that I saw in my own personal and professional journey. But today it definitely is taking a storm in Canada, only because it's gained the support of a passionate board, officers, volunteers, ambassadors in the community. Our mission is to empower South Asian women to achieve their potential. We have a hardworking board that divides their focus on 4 key cohorts. And those are high school, post-secondary, middle management, and next chapter. A term that we coined for women who are entering or re-entering the workforce due to reasons such as taking a break to raise their children. We started with a gala to celebrate and recognize game-changing South Asian women and to inspire the next generation by having them involved with us. So after last year, when I felt that we had a strong foundation, I was able to divert some of that extra energy into formalizing a board. And since then, we've launched a quarterly newsletter, an amazing podcast, championing, a national study all the way to the Prime Minister, which today states that, South Asian women are the youngest, highest educated, and fastest growing population in Canada. Yet we're the highest unemployed at 20.4%. This number still makes my stomach crunch, and we're so excited to announce, though, that TD Bank, Sephora, Scotiabank, and EMY so far have joined us on our mission to find out why this is happening and seek out tangible steps to take this high rate down.
What an incredible journey.
Mhm.
Really, really incredible journey there. Barinder, you're actually the vice chair of Pink Attitude Evolution and also the co-founder of the Attitude podcast. Talk to us a bit about the podcast and what it's all about.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to sort of echo what Ruby said about this incredible organization.
Mhm.
You know, hats off to her to recognize that there was this need in the Canadian market and beyond. And so when it came to the podcast, one of the things that we talked about was our outreach. We really wanted to have a greater outreach, and hence why, you know, as Ruby shared, we launched the quarterly newsletters and different ways of getting that outreach. And what a better way than to talk to other South Asian women like yourself, Rita. You know, you have a powerful story. So many South Asian women have struggles and challenges and successes, and we can learn from them. And so this is an opportunity that we can showcase and spotlight South Asian women, their journey, what it took to deal with adversity, and how we can celebrate them and their successes. And so for us, this was a quickest way to share knowledge and bring people along. And, you know, for us, especially in the South Asian community, there are endless ways that we can divide ourselves, right? Religion, our culture, our language, food, so many ways. But there's only, our purpose is to create cohesiveness. As South Asian women, we should celebrate our differences, appreciate those differences, but then come together on those common challenges, those common issues, and then figure out what are the best solutions that we can implement. So part of that national study that Ruby shared was for us to have that common voice, for us to rally behind each other and say, you know what, this is impacting me as well. So many, many times, you know, a lot of people have told us, this is your perception. And I hate the word perception because your perception is not reality. You're trying to make it reality. Reality is data, and Ruby shared that data. And so for me, it's really about getting to the root cause of reality, and I throw out perception. And so finally, we have data to show this is not a perception, it's reality. And now we're going to move forward to change that reality, not only for ourselves, but for the generations to come.
That's such a key point, that data is key. Data is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And that is what moves education and change in the long term. So Ruby, can you talk to us about the impact that your work has had, particularly on South Asian women in Toronto?
Yeah, I think, you know, the first impact that we've had is, you know, we have shared stories and lived experiences, which, you know, growing up, both Barinder and I didn't have. And, you know, both of us being the eldest in our families were the lived experiences, and we're just navigating. You know, we didn't have the support around us. We didn't have the guidance around us. And so we felt that it was necessary to bring that forward to women, you know, about, you know, older than us, younger than us. And, you know, there's lots of work to be done. So I think that's the first impact, is to have representation. And I think, you know, we've laid a strong foundation, but there's a lot of work ahead of us. The national study alone justifies the need for our existence and the impact that we're looking to make. I think our goal is simple, like our parents did for us, to be a catalyst. We want to leave a legacy of stronger generations where women and girls are always empowered to achieve their full potential. Every time I look at a little girl, I always, in my heart, always pray that, you know, that she, you know, never hesitates on living life to the fullest.
Such a powerful message right there. And I think of my daughter, and I see exactly the same thing, that I want her to overcome any of these challenges and struggles when you go forward. But speaking of challenges, there are so many in life. Barinder, can you talk to us about a challenge that you faced and how you overcame it?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to digress a little bit. I think typically, you know, we might hear business challenges, and we you know, we have platforms to sort of share that. I'm going to share a more personal challenge, which is health. And for me, it's psoriasis. So psoriasis is a autoimmune disorder, and basically it can take over a lot of your life if it's not controlled. And, you know, being in the pharma world for 20 years, I didn't want to use the sort of or gravitate towards the traditional pharmaceutical therapies because there are a lot of side effects that are associated with this. And there is no cure for psoriasis. So the last year, I had been trying to figure out how food, supplements, environment, stress, sleep, all impact triggers and flare-ups within psoriasis. So my passion, and I've spent my spare time to really develop a program that will help people who are suffering from psoriasis. Now, I'm not suggesting that, you know, pharmaceutical medications do not help. They do. But I think that the importance is that they mask the issue and the disease. It's not addressing it from the root cause. Right. And what I'm trying to figure out and really try to overcome is how can we better understand our bodies and our interaction with all these variables, and how does it impact the response system? And in this case, that psoriasis flare up. And so for me, it's an ongoing challenge. And I know many, many people suffer from it. I think it's close to 140 million people in this world. And so I'm really trying to figure out those pieces and hopefully provide and offer some possible solutions that can help ease some of this pain.
Incredible work you're doing, and best of luck to you, Barinder, for that. Ruby, what about you, about the challenge that you encountered and what you did to overcome it?
Yeah, so I think everyone has challenges, so mine aren't any different than many out there, but what I have become better at is navigating through them. So for me, being the eldest, it's always been about solving everyone else's problems and then always being that leader in the house. So I innately think I've learned to step back a little bit and learn to either first look at a problem and be like, can I solve it or can I not solve it? And if I can't solve it, I've learned to accept it and that everything cannot be fixed. So you know, I've learned over the years that I, you know, try to get better at not always fixing the problem, but accepting it and allowing things to unfold the way that they are. In addition, I think I really lean into my spiritual side that always helps me get over the most difficult crossroads I had in my life. But I think it's just been that, like, problems could be, you know, we all come through so many problems. So I think the best thing that we can learn to do or challenge ourselves to do is learn how to navigate best through them.
Absolutely. And I think you've actually hit the nail on the head there when you talked about just accepting that these happen in the first place, because so many people don't. And that is the first route in a way to overcoming these challenges, accepting it's happened. And then, okay, now what are we going to do about it? And actually do that problem solving element. Yeah. So that's sharing.
So hard. whether it's like letting go a friend or letting go a situation, or whether it's letting going a work situation, I think the hardest thing is to accept. So yeah.
Absolutely. Before we let you both go, what advice would you give to your younger self about to step into your shoes and think about this from yourself a few years ago? So Barinder, how about you first?
Oh my goodness, this is a tough question. I would tell my younger self to not stress out and put so much pressure on yourself and enjoy the moments. You know, I think it was always about one milestone after another milestone, and, you know, sometimes not appreciating the journey that we're on. And so I would tell myself to slow down. It's going to happen. You know, you're going to get there. But just celebrate those moments. The other thing I think that I have learned is the importance and relevance of mentorship. You know, it wasn't a term that was sort of defined to us when we were younger, and we didn't understand the value of mentorship. And so I would have reached out more when I was younger and contemplating different paths in life, to kind of reach out those individuals, those experts, whether it was a situation, whether it was a career, whether it was personal, to just hear thoughts. Because again, the one thing that I've learned over time is that how important continuous learning is. And so had I known the impact that people have on that learning, and that you can take what you need and disregard what might not apply, is such a powerful message. And so I would kind of put that in my ear if I was if I had that ability to be like, just take that moment and figure it out, and it's going to pay off. Yeah.
Amazing. What about you, Ruby? If you could travel back in time to talk to your younger self?
I you know, there's so many lessons, and you know, and you learn that, you know, through life. So I think the biggest message and my wish to all the women and girls out there is to always trust and believe in themselves. The one thing that will always be a constant in your life is your mind. So take time out to reflect and work on yourself. It is only when you conquer your mind will you conquer the world.
Great words to end on. Thank you so much, Barinder and Ruby from Pink Attitude Evolution, for sharing your incredible stories with us today. And thank you to our viewers for joining us on this empowerment journey. We want you all to embrace that inner goddess of go-getting. We want you to be bold, be you, be Uma.